now about to present the main attraction of our world-famous show.
Greetings and welcome everyone to another episode of Reign Over Me, the Atlanta Reign podcast. I'm Shy Guy, he's Norcetto, and normally I would ask you at this point in the show how you're doing, but I feel like I already know the answer to that.
Fantastic.
That's right. We're both riding high right now, along with the Reign, because this week we're talking playoffs, baby.
We made it, man. Stage 1 playoffs, expansion team. This is huge news. I know that we had a rough last couple of weeks, but all things considered, like making stage playoffs for an expansion team is a huge deal. So I'm really happy we made it.
Yeah, one of I believe it's 3 expansion teams that ended up making. There were several kind of right on the cusp on the outside looking in, but to be one of those on the inside looking out is a very good feeling. And we are definitely not done yet. I have a feeling this is not going to be a one and done situation for Atlanta in the playoffs, but we will get to all of that.
Oh, I have
later.
Plenty. I have plenty to say about Philly. We'll get there.
I'm very excited for that, but we will get to that in a little bit. First, we gotta talk about how we got here. And we had an action-packed weekend, despite it only being 2 days of games. Atlanta had games both days, going up against Chengdu on Saturday, and then taking down the Outlaws on Sunday. It was quite a week. Yeah,
absolutely. It was, and all things considered, I felt pretty good about my predictions. I got the numbers right at least. I was scared, man. I was scared of a map 5 from Chengdu, and it ended up happening. That was a rough one, but overall, just a packed weekend for viewers and for the Reign.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of right there with you. I was worried about Chengdu as a whole, and I kind of felt going into both of these series that if it went to map 5, that is not what Atlanta was looking for, because
right.
Both Chengdu and Houston are very solid teams when it comes to control, especially with the crazy looks that Chengdu has kind of perfected over the course of this stage. They are very dangerous in that situation, and that definitely played out on Saturday.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they're just there's one of those teams that have just grown more and more every week, and they have found their own groove, their own path, and it's working better and better every week for them. At this point, like if they were playing the way they played the past couple weeks from the beginning of the season, they would be the team people were fearing in playoffs right now. They are a sleeper assassin.
Certainly, I mean, and it's such a weird thing with Chengdu. I thought once we hit kind of the middle of the first stage, I fully expected everyone to start kind of figuring out their game plan and figuring out how you are supposed to play against their crazy style, but that just was not the case. I mean, they almost knocked off Vancouver. They knocked the Reign down a peg a little bit here in the last week, and they just continued to improve, continued to get better over the course of the stage, and they are going to be a really fun team to watch moving forward into the rest of the league, especially if they keep eschewing the meta and just doing whatever the heck they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about Chengdu, though, and the thing about the last couple of weeks with Vancouver and the Reign is it does kind of make sense. Of course, Chengdu is a good team. They have very, very good players. Among has been crazy on Hammond, and Jinmu on the Pharaoh was just a beast.
Oh.
But yeah, right. But you have to look at the teams that they're facing and the situations they're in. First off, you have Vancouver, who at this point must feel slightly untouchable. They've been riding high since the beginning, and they were very much caught off guard by Chengdu. I can only imagine that they only prepped so much for specific counters rather than just practicing their own game that they wanted to play.
It's impossible to prep for Chengdu. No one you scrim is going to be able to play like them.
Right?
They're not going to scrim you themselves. So how the heck are you supposed to prep? for them.
Exactly. So that's a good explanation for Vancouver. And then with Atlanta, I can only imagine Atlanta coming into this going, we have to win one of these games, and especially we have to beat the Outlaws. So what are you gonna do? You gotta try to come up with these weird comps and really lean into beating Chengdu, or are you gonna say, we're gonna do our best against Chengdu, but we're gonna beat the crap out of the Outlaws? And I think that kind of shined through. I'm not trying to take away anything from the Hunters, because I think they're all very talented, and their focus on the off meta comp is I frankly think they're going to be terrifying once we kind of move away from goats with all these changes and stuff. But they're probably going to be the team that leads the big goats counter movement and finds those comps, because they can play it, they just don't want to.
Certainly, and they are definitely much more comfortable when they basically get to put every single player on their roster on like their comfort picks. When they get to throw Jinmu on that Pharah, they are just scary as all heck. Like that performance from him over the course of the rain match was, I think it was the single best like DPS performance of the entire stage. Obviously, we haven't had that many DPS performances. Teams just haven't had a lot of opportunities to play it, but he was a menace.
He was, and it really seemed like it was hard to tell whether or not we didn't know what to do, or we didn't really, our plan was maybe to focus something else, because a lot of those maps, it felt like he just had free reign to do whatever he wanted, and it was he was definitely the the point of the dagger of the Chengdu offense there, and it really hurt. And it was just really hard to counter him with that comp. As we know, goats is very close range damage, so when you get that long range damage with a Pharah, it's just really hard to play around it. And with how scrappy and spread out Chengdu remains when they fight, it's just we couldn't really do much about it. But that was really rough back and forth. The maps they won. Like, it was like we did nothing. We got demolished on the maps they won.
Horizon especially was so one-sided. Like that
as a big oof.
It feels bad to see the Torb on the other side, and to see Defrang getting shut down by that to an extent. It was tough to watch, but that being said, it's kind of a credit to Atlanta that they are able to scrap out 2 wins in a matchup that really just didn't seem to be kind of in their wheelhouse. Like to be able to keep it that close, force it to a game 5 is pretty good in that situation. And I think it did end up making a bit of a difference in the stage standings as a whole. It kept Atlanta in that 5 spot, being able to grind out those 2 maps in that series. So, I think that could wind up actually having a pretty significant impact in terms of how far Atlanta can actually go here.
Yeah, for sure. And we had talked a few weeks ago about their Atlanta's difficulty with payload maps early on, and those were the maps we actually were able to gain ground on. Specifically, as much as we were kind of wrecked by Chengdu's compositions in different respects, especially on, like you said, on Horizon, that defense we had. That's one of the reasons I feel like we maybe didn't really focus on finding counters for them, because what happened, we set up with Bastion and an Orisa, and they immediately just rolled in with a Hammond, knocked the Orisa out of the way, and there's no more shield for the Bastion. What do we do? So it was rough, but at the same time, Atlanta, especially that final hold on Rialto, where nope. I'm thinking of the other hold on Rialto. We'll get there anyway.
Well, there was a final hold on Rialto in that match as well.
Yeah,
but,
that's not the one I'm thinking of though. So.
they actually, they came out with 2 really good defenses on the last point of Rialto. But the Houston one, I think, especially was really good. It's hard to have a ton of like takeaways from a match against Chengdu, other than like Atlanta had a hard time with Chengdu. You can't like extrapolate. You can't extrapolate to other teams. It doesn't really tell you anything about Atlanta as a team other than they couldn't handle what Chengdu brought to the table. So I mean, there's not a whole lot else to go into there. But why don't
honestly,
we?
that's just like I can just imagine Vancouver, the personification of Vancouver, just like drinking a beer, going, "Man, I feel that." Like, like
Exactly.
I mean, it's they took Vancouver to a map 5, and in Vancouver, they squeezed it out. I honestly think if Chengdu would have had like Bacon Jack in on that last map, they probably would have taken them. But
Yeah,
um,
that match was weird. I mean, they opted into playing goats against Vancouver on the last map after like destroying them with DPS. But that is neither here nor there. So
exactly.
let's turn our attention, I guess, a little bit over towards the Houston series, the one that clinched it all, that pushed Atlanta into the playoffs.
Yeah, this is the one I was expecting us to win, and we did. It was 3-1, which honestly surprised me a little bit. I expected us to. I actually expected us to win Kings Row, which was the one we dropped, but all in all, it came down to the Outlaws as a team are not great. They rolled in with. To be honest, like if you look at them, they rolled in with Sombra Goats with Dante on the Sombra, and he did phenomenally. And every time that EMP was up, they pretty much wiped us out. But it just wasn't enough to stop us, because anytime it wasn't up, they didn't have enough answers to stop Atlanta.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's the thing with Sombra as a character right now. When you are playing, in the dry fights where you don't have EMP, you're just going to be at such a severe disadvantage that you cannot afford to make a whole lot of mistakes outside of that. Like you have to execute every single EMP really, really well. And for the most part, Houston did that.
Yep.
But Atlanta, over the course of the series, I really thought kind of came into their own in terms of dealing with the Sombra specifically. They looked much more comfortable with it. I mean, Horizon was a bloodbath because
Yep.
where Atlanta's defense is kind of perfect for dealing with a Sombra because you're just so spread out on that first point of Horizon that it's hard to get those big EMPs. And the Houston struggled, and then Rialto was. It was a very close map, but I thought in some ways it was kind of Atlanta's strongest map of the series.
Yeah. It was definitely overall map wise, it was strong with the hold that they had on them, and just kind of shutting down everything they had. Like you said, like there had been the rain had kind of derailed a little bit ever since the Gladiators game, and they'd been trying to kind of fight back. And I think this was really, as the series of maps went on, Atlanta started to finally kind of find its footing again. Even on the Chengdu games, it felt like a lot of times they were on their back foot, or kind of being pushed a little bit and having to play around, obviously, that weird comp. But with this game, it really felt like they kind of found that synergy again. And yeah, and this is the one I want to talk about, Rialto, because that final hold is one of my favorite plays that I've seen, because they had so many ults. They nailed a shatter, they nailed a transcendence, they had and this is the Outlaws, they had the EMP that went off, and Atlanta just brushed all of it off and were able to make that final hold. And that's kind of the story of the day. They started off a little bit sloppy from the last couple weeks, but as the games went on, they built up to that last hold, and that is the Atlanta team I want to see in the playoffs.
For sure. And, one thing I will note, I mean, I talked about a little bit earlier that I thought Atlanta got better at dealing with the Sombra throughout the series. On that last point, they were doing an excellent job of just not really letting Dante get into the right positions for his EMPs. Like they were really denying him a lot of space. They were doing a great job of scouting, Daco especially, of just making sure they were keeping tabs on Dante and not giving him opportunities to find those big EMPs. And they really kind of clutched up when it mattered most, which is I think a very good sign heading into playoffs.
Yeah, and that's one thing that you really got to look at when it comes to these teams, because it doesn't matter who is the best team, like who is the most who you would rank highest, who has the best stats. It's the team that wins, and being able to have those clutch moments. I think we found that out season 1 with New York. They dropped off early in the playoffs, and that just, a lot of people said they are the best team, but it doesn't matter if you drop games. It comes down to that ability to have those clutch moments, to adapt, to get better as the series goes on. And yeah, absolutely, with the way that they were playing and the way that they adapted around Dante Sombra, it's huge. I think they could pull it off against a lot of these teams in the playoffs.
Speaking of which, let's guess, unless you have anything else to add on that Houston series. Oh, actually,
I have two things to add. Actually, yeah, go ahead.
I just remembered one thing that I wanted to talk about, and that was my absolute joy at getting to see Dogman play the Ana again.
Yes,
which I love, and I think that is perhaps even a better hero pick for him than Zenyatta at times. He is a phenomenal Ana, and that was a huge part of pulling off that crazy hold at the end of Rialto. His bionic grenades were on point.
Well, you had Popo on the Rhine, who had just gotten shattered and like was just laying there in front of the Outlaws, ready to get picked apart. And then from off screen, you just see these darts coming in from Dogman, keeping him alive. And then the grenade comes in to wipe him out. And that one big swing from Popo that wiped them out. Oh my God. No, but the only other things I want to add at that game are, I was a Houston fan last year before we had an Atlanta team. So, and they disappointed me then, so I'm really happy that we knocked them out. And 2, respect where it's due. Dante did play a really good Sombra, and Muma had his moments, including that fat shatter to win King's Row. So I will give him that.
Yeah, they just, the moments for Houston were a little too few and far between during that series, and Atlanta was able to close things out, which now leads us into our playoff discussion. I guess before we get that, let's touch a little bit on how the playoff bracket was decided the other day with the coin flip gate.
Oh yeah, coin flip gate. So there's 2 teams or 4 teams, 2 sets of teams that were tied up for the playoffs. That was Seoul and
Shock.
And Shock, that's right. And then the Defiant and the Fusion. So Seoul and the Shock actually ended up playing a series off camera, non-broadcast, and that's whatever. But between the Philadelphia Fusion and the Toronto Defiant, it seemed like neither of them really wanted to play the Shock. So they didn't really want to play to win, so they opted for a coin flip. And that coin flip, it was announced on on Twitter that heads was one team, and on Instagram that heads was another team, or on Twitter it was one thing, and then Nate Nanzer said the other thing. Regardless, there was a few, probably about 20 minutes of just utter confusion across the community about who was playing whom.
It was absolutely beautiful to watch. I mean, it's exactly what was kind of deserved after having a tiebreaker like that come down to a coin flip. For the coin flip itself to get kind of bungled is kind of perfectly encapsulates that whole situation. Just some unintentional comedy coming out from the Overwatch League right there, and I enjoyed it because it. Either way, I feel like I would have been happy. We had Toronto or Philly as the matchup for Atlanta, and either of those I thought would have been very good series, 2 rematches from the regular stage. But I'm ultimately, I think, happier with how it turned out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, or even Dogman, said that he wanted to play Philly. Just the last thing on the Nate Nanzer coin flip gate thing, the fact that he came out after that happened and was like, we are never having a coin flip ever again.
Yeah, kudos to them, because I mean, at least they realized that was a mistake and not how this should have gone down. So,
but
it'll be a piece of league history that everyone who is there in season 2 gets to look back on and remember fondly.
Yeah, it was great. But yeah, even Dogman said he wanted to play the Philadelphia Fusion. We beat the Defiant, and we lost a super close match against the Fusion. And I think out of those rematches, we want revenge. We want vengeance. We want that win put back on our record against who is better, Philly or Atlanta. And it even ties into season 3 of Contenders last year when ATL Academy went up against Fusion University in that epic battle and lost there. There's so much of a like fledgling rivalry between Atlanta and Philly, and I love it, and I really want to beat them, and I think we can.
I definitely think it's possible. I mean, even beyond the potential rivalry. I mean, you've got the telecom wars going down in this game, and even beyond that, I do think it's just a very good matchup for Atlanta. Toronto over the course of this stage has kind of been surging, building and building and building. Like Atlanta kind of, I think in part got a little lucky to have played them so early before they had really kind of leveled up. That's not to say I think Toronto would have beaten them in this matchup, but they are on the up and up. They have the momentum at their backs right now. So, and Philly, on the other hand, has looked a little middling over the course of the stage. Yes, they come away with a 5-2 record, but it wasn't exactly smooth sailing.
Yeah, but let's look at this record. Like I said, I have some things I need to say about Philly. So 5-2 record, sure, but let's look at the games they played. Let's go ahead and start with week 1, where Philly played and beat the Spitfire, and that was a huge deal because this was the rematch. This was the rematch of the finals, and everybody thought this was going to be huge. Turns out the Spitfire are terrible at current meta. At least I'm not going to say they're. I know they're very talented players, but at least in this meta, the Spitfire has been awful. So that game's out. Then they played us week 1. That was a barn burner. That was really good. So you move on to week 2, and you have Philly playing the Florida Mayhem and the Dallas Fuel. Now, Boombox was sick this week, but they lost both games. Fuel, fine. They lost to Fuel. Fuel's a good team this season. But Mayhem? Really? And you can say what you want about Boombox being out, but if one player being out means that you're going to lose to Mayhem, it's bigger than one player, right?
And side note, how lucky is Mayhem that they got that win and didn't wind up winless on this stage? Because without that, you're looking at Mayhem at the very bottom of the standings, and everyone probably universally agreeing that they are the worst team in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be the battle against Valiant, which we'll get to Valiant in a second, because we're moving on to week 3, where Philadelphia then starts the section of their schedule that is just powder puff league. Man, we got Washington Justice, who look, I hope they get better. That's all I'll say about the Justice, right? And then who was it after that? Then they played Valiant, who is a trash can fire right now, and went to map 5 against Valiant. Like, I mean,
not great,
man. And then they finally in this last week went up against Paris Eternal and beat Paris. Now, I think Paris has the potential to be a good team. They were a good team, but they've been crashing and burning since we 4-0'd them. So who has Philadelphia actually, like, what's the deal with Philadelphia? Are they a good team? I don't.
Right. At this point, Atlanta in week 1 is their most impressive victory that they've got on their resume right now. And Atlanta at that point, I don't think is the same Atlanta that we're seeing right now. And I don't think that Philly has seemed to kind of level up dramatically in the same way that most of the league has, as they've gotten more practice on goats. Philly still seems like really underwhelming when they have to play Rhine goats. Their Winston is still very top tier. Like Sato is a beast, but when they have to go in that Rhine v Rhine matchup, it doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. And like, yeah, I mean, if they can play Winston, like you said, Sato is really good, but just make it where he can't play Winston. I mean, there's plenty of ways to play around that and kind of force their hand. And I still think it's going to be a close game. That emotions are going to be running really high for this game. Philly's going to really want it, and again, they're very, very talented squad. But Philly has had all these wins, and have coasted through this easy schedule, and Reign has had some losses, but you learn more from a loss than you will from a win a lot of times. And I think the uh, being humbled by a few of the teams that we've lost to has probably given us a little more of an edge than we had in week 1. And remember, it wasn't just we lost to Philly. It wasn't just that we lost in map 5. We lost map 5, round 3, 99-99. Like, it was insane. So yeah, I think that we have the edge going into this round 1 of stage playoffs.
I would have to agree, and I think a lot of people are of the same mindset. This is, in my mind, going to be an insanely close series. I don't see any way that this doesn't go to map 5. One thing to note here, that unlike the regular season, we do have teams getting to do map picks for the playoffs, which I think will throw an interesting kind of wrinkle into things, where you can find maps where your opponents are not very good, and you can have specific strategies to kind of exploit their weaknesses. So a lot of in my mind, a lot of how these playoffs are going to go is how, at least for the first round, where you've had time to prep for an individual opponent, I think that's going to play a very big role in the playoffs as a whole. And this match, I think, is no different in that regard.
Yeah, I really think Atlanta is going to, like you said, it's going to be very seat of your pants, like kind of pick up and go as you progress through the playoffs. But this first game, I don't think it's just, the fans want it, the coaches know how to do it, there's more game tape. I think the players really want this one, and I think it's going to show.
Yeah, I think, if Dogman is any indication, and I think he kind of is, he, to me, has kind of been the heart and soul of this team through stage 1. If his reaction is after the games on Sunday is any indication of how the rest of the team feels, they're going to be fired up for this game. They are ready to go. I think they're going to be locked in for this one.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you think? How far do you think this one's going to go? Because I want to play out and see where we think the bracket's going to go for sure. But as far as this game, you think we're going all the way? You think we're going to map 5?
Yeah, I've got this as a 3-2 for Atlanta. It wouldn't feel right if we didn't go the distance here, just to get some a little bit of symmetry with the first game of the season. And I still think, no matter what, Philly still has like an edge to them, where they have so much experience on this team. They were in the finals last year. They know what it's like to be playing in this kind of do or die situation in the pressure packed moments. So I don't want to kind of underrate that side of them, but unless they kind of can flip a switch, I do think this has to go to Atlanta. So for me, it's a 3-2.
I don't even want to say that it's going to go to a map 5 because of how Fusion plays in map 5s, but I think with map picks and stuff like that, I don't see this not going to a map 5. I just don't. I'm right there with you. I think this is going to be a 3-2, and because of everything we've been talking about, I do think it's going to go to Atlanta. And that's another thing. I'm going to go back to week 1, where they did have their best game against us. All these expansion teams, right, are figuring out how the OWL plays, and this is their chance of being like, oh, let's just sneak in from our synergy from last year. So yeah, that's I needed to go back and get one more jab in. But yeah, I think it's going to be a 3-2. I think it's going to go to Atlanta. But here's the thing: I'm going to go one step further. I think it's going to be a back and forth. I don't think there's going to be any reverse sweep, or I think it's going to be map 1, map the other way, map first way, map the second way. But then in map 5, I'm going to call Atlanta beats the crap out of them. I'm going to say that it's going to be a decisive map 5, which might come back to bite me, but I just have a feeling that once we get there, I think the guys are going to kick it up a notch.
Well, I certainly hope so. I think that would be kind of poetic way to round out the series here, and to kind of do what they were just unable to do in week 1. And win the map 5 would be such a good moment for this team. I I think stage one is already kind of an uncategorized success for Atlanta.
For
But
sure.
a win here would just be such a nice little bonus for them to get some playoff experience under their belts, to get some confidence heading into stage two. I am really looking forward to this weekend for a lot of reasons, but that being chief among them.
Yeah, and playing off of that, let me just say that if for whatever reason something happens and we don't beat Philly, or something happens and we lose the second round, which we'll get into, and there's a it's going to be a fun one. But if that happens, like, I don't think the Reign has anything to be ashamed of. The fact that we were one of three teams to make it to the playoffs, and I think that, hell, even Monty on said that the Reign had changed his mind throughout the season. I mean, they have made a statement. They've made an impact, and I think they've proven that they have the ability, they have the skill, the international roster works, they have the coaching staff. They just have all of the pieces that they need. They built the team so well that even if this doesn't work out, there's still a lot of games left to play. There's a lot of the season left, and they should be damn proud of what they've accomplished.
Absolutely. So let's turn our attention now to kind of the playoffs at large, and how we kind of see the rest of this playing out. If Atlanta is able to make it through to the second round, how far do you see them going?
Oh man. Okay. So the other side of our side of the bracket is the Boston Uprising versus the Vancouver Titans. So
let me stop you before you go any further, because I learned this just earlier today, and it sounds like you might not yet be aware, but the bracket actually gets reseeded after the first round.
Oh, hey, there you go. Okay.
So it's not like a one-to-one thing. It's hard to predict, like, even if we could.
Interesting. Okay.
It's very hard to say exactly who we could play. I think the most, from my looking at it, the most likely outcome is, well, I think it's kind of a 50-50 split whether we would play Vancouver or New York XL. Like, assuming both of those teams make it through, which I don't have a whole lot of doubts about. The other game, the 3-6 matchup between Toronto and San Francisco, to me is very much a toss up.
That's gonna be a great game. I'm really looking forward to that game a lot too. San Francisco, I haven't had a chance to watch a whole lot of their stuff, but what I have seen has impressed me thoroughly. I think they still have a few, they still make minor mistakes here and there, but overall, I think they're very strong. And as you were saying, Toronto has just been powering up throughout the stage. So this is going to be big.
Yeah. So if Toronto wins that match, then Vancouver is in the cards for Atlanta. If it's San Francisco, the lower seed, jumping up, then we would get to play New York XL.
We get to.
Yeah. That's the prize for being the higher seed, is you get to go up against New York in the playoffs. So I mean, both of those I think would be just insanely hard matchups. Like, I can't in good conscience say I expect Atlanta to beat either of those teams.
Yeah, fair.
But you never know.
Look, like I was saying, you don't have to be the best team. You just have to be able to beat the best team. And I know that seems a little weird, but in these games where, hell, Mayhem beat Philly, we were just talking about that. Pretty much, like, any team can do it, you know? It just depends on the day. Between these two, oh god, I don't know. What do you think? Who would you rather play? Like, who would you rather play between the Titans runaway or the season one just poster boys of how to be a great consistent team, the New York XL?
If I'm being honest, I would rather play Vancouver. Just because I always, in the back of my mind, I can never get over this. No matter how many times they win, there is always just a part of me that thinks Bumper is gonna throw, like, every single fight.
But Bumper does throw every fight.
I mean, yes.
Backs him up.
No, I understand that, and I'm starting to come to terms with it a little bit. But those kind of things, I think, give a team that might not necessarily be on the same, like, skill level, it gives you a chance. It gives you an opening, and it gives you kind of mistakes that you can capitalize on. Whereas when I look at New York, they just play perfectly. They do everything right all the time, and they grind you into paste.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you completely. I think that the best way I put it, and this is something that I saw last season as well, is consistency will get you through the season, but those higher peaks, which come at the expense of lower valleys, but those higher peaks are kind of what will propel you in a lot of ways. And Vancouver has those peaks. They have those peaks that have helped them get over some of these hurdles to win these games that have been a little rough for them. And I think that those are that's the team that we need to look at for from Atlanta's perspective to find those valleys, to find those plays where Bumper goes a little too aggressive, to watch and see where those mistakes are made and exploit it. Because for every mistake they make these huge clutch plays. But if you can find a way to maneuver in between those, you can dismantle the Titans. But like you're saying, New York it's just a wall. Like they don't stop. They don't stop being just consistently good. And yeah, they're scary, man. They're scary. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I'd rather go up against the Titans. I think we have a shot against the Titans. I don't know if I think overall we are better than the Titans, but I think we could beat the Titans.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. And I mean, this is coming from someone who, if you put a gun to my head right now, I'm probably picking Vancouver to win the stage overall. But it is so razor thin at the highest level between those two teams. Even as Atlanta fan, and I would lose my mind if Atlanta made the state, like the finals here. A part of me is still like, I really want to see Vancouver, New York in the finals, and that the matchup that everyone has kind of been promised at this point. It's almost too good to pass up.
Yeah, I agree. Isn't that weird though that both of us think that, like, of the two teams, who do we think we could beat? Vancouver. Of the two teams, which one do you think is going to win? Vancouver. It's we both think we can beat them, but we both think they can beat New York. It's those high peaks. I'm telling you, like they can peak, but yeah, man, I'm gonna call Atlanta's gonna win because I have to, because I refuse to not at this point. If we're going this far in, I'm gonna say that if they play Vancouver, Atlanta's gonna get them. And if it happens, if we were able to find those exploits, and if we were able to exploit those valleys, I think we do it in a 3-1. I don't even think it goes to a map 5. If we're gonna win, we do it in a 3-1.
Well, the interesting thing there, and something
it's a map 7.
It's a 7-map series in the semifinals. So I was gonna say that, either of those teams, Vancouver or New York, both of them are have a lot of kind of experience to back them up. I mean, Vancouver, as runaway, finally got their win in Korea in a grueling 7-map series that actually went to 8 maps. So they've been there, they've done that before. Yeah, and that's something to keep in mind throughout this weekend, because especially for teams like Atlanta that are playing on Friday, you are looking at a 5-map series on Friday, a 7-map series on Saturday, and then potentially another 7-map series on Sunday. That is a marathon right there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really glad that all these teams are only having to play once a day, though. Unlike some of the events last year, but. Yeah, I guess if we're looking at that, I'm going to stick with what I'm saying, though. Obviously not 3-1, but I think if we beat Vancouver, it's not going to go the distance. I think we're seeing like a 4-1, 4-2. I don't even see us making a map 7 if we beat them. Now, there's a chance if it's a little rough, we'll get there, and I'll be a little bit more worried. But yeah, I guess I'll call it like a 4-2 if we end up placing the Titans.
I think I'm probably gonna flip it on that one and say 4-2 in favor of whichever team Atlanta would be going up against. It's definitely possible, but I think they've got to be the underdogs no matter how you slice it going into that cigarette, unless something absolutely bonkers happens and like Seoul and Boston upset them, and then nobody knows anything anymore. So
look, man, Boston, like if we're talking about peaks and valleys, Boston has has, especially with Keller Hex being in there, has been
Boston's
doing
scary.
really good, man. They've been scary. I think that definitely Boston has a shot over Vancouver more than Seoul has a shot over New York.
I would agree.
But there's always a chance. But honestly, it's such a slim chance. I'm not even really gonna try and predict what Atlanta versus Seoul or Boston would be, because I just don't think it's gonna happen. But yeah, if we have to go up against New York, man.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Atlanta wins. I'm not going to give numbers because it makes me uncomfortable. No, like at
That's
that
probably
point,
smart.
I do think if we do get through the finals, though, like at that point, I'm throwing my hands up and saying, whatever, we won anyway. I don't care who we face in the finals. Like if we get through the semifinals, that is, it
would be huge.
Huge. But yeah.
I would love to see it. Even if I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but it's going to be a great weekend regardless. There's going to be lots of really, really good games going on. Saturday with 2 best-of-7s back to back is going to be ridiculous. And it should be a whole lot of fun. You'll be covering Atlanta's games. I've got Vancouver's as well, so maybe we'll be on opposite sides.
Oh yeah, that'll be good. Now, just for, and especially since you're going to be covering Vancouver, I know we're this Atlanta podcast here, but if it does, for genuine curiosity, go down to the Titans versus New York, who do you think?
I've got Titans. I feel like I kind of have to. There, it's like you said, they definitely have the peaks, and I think a lot of it will come down to kind of how New York plays it. If New York opts into kind of just playing goats and they're like, we think we can be better at goats than Vancouver, I don't think that goes well for them. But New York has so much flexibility in their roster. They've got all of these DPS players on there that haven't really been utilized a whole lot during the first stage. If they try to go with some crazy stuff, they break out Libero on the Pharah, that could definitely give Vancouver some trouble. But even with that, at least for right now, I'm gonna pick Vancouver to take it all.
Yeah, that's fair. Atlanta takes it all. They're going to 7-0 or both of them, even though we don't need it. They're going to keep playing the games. That's my prediction. If I know I'm going to fail, I'm fine to make that prediction. But yeah, I'm more focus on Friday. Let's focus on the Philly game, and let's play the best game we know how, because I think we can do it, and I think Philly's going down. That'll be a good game though.
Yeah, let's make it happen. But that is gonna be it for us here this week. You can catch all our coverage of all of the games this weekend over at the Game Haus. Got recaps of every game that's going on. Previews up right now for all these teams. So be sure to check that out. We actually today our very own Thibbledork put out a short little piece involving Dogman and some of his thoughts on the new meta that's going to be coming for Stage 2. So be sure to check that out as well.
Which I'm really excited about. I'm so glad they're changing things up, and I think we'll still deal with some goats, but I think we're going to see a slow transition to some new comps. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we'll be back next week with kind of an overarching Stage 1 review and looking back at how well this team has done so far, and hopefully we got at least another win or two to talk about next week. But that'll be it for us here this week. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a good one, folks.
Have a good one. Let it rain.
I want to play you another one.
Really? Yes. Really? Yes. Yes. Yes.
I want to play you another one.
Really?